Hello learners. Today's session is for BA Honours English Part 3, Paper 7. The topic is The Lotus by Toru Dutt. A poet, novelist, essayist, translator, polyglot, she was an outstanding pioneer in the history of Indian literature. She was born as Torulata Dutt to father Govinda Chandar Dutt and mother Chetramani of the Rambagan Dutt family. Toru was the youngest child after sister Aru and brother Abju. They were first educated at home by private English tutors and spent an idyllic childhood dividing their time between their city residence at Rambagan and their country or garden house at Bogmari. Toru Dutt was a natural linguist and in her short life became proficient in Bengali, English, French, and later in Sanskrit. She left behind an impressive collection of prose and poetry. Her poetry comprises of A Sheaf Gleaned in French Fields, published in the year 1876, consisting of her translations into English of French poetry, and Ancient Ballads and Legends of Hindustan, which compiles her translations and adaptations from Sanskrit literature, duly published posthumously in the year 1882. Edmund Gass wrote an introductory memoir for Ancient Ballads and Legends of Hindustan. He wrote for Toru Dutt. She brought with her from Europe a store of knowledge that would have sufficed to make an English or French girl seem learned, but which in her case was simply miraculous. Her poetry contribute significantly towards the strengthening of women's writing in India. Likewise, French critic James Darmestater's eulogistic description, this daughter of Bengal, Hindu by race and tradition, an English woman by education, a French woman at heart, poet in English, prose writer in French, who at the age of 18 made India familiar with the poets of France in the rhyme of England, who blended in herself three souls and three traditions, presents in the history of literature a phenomenon without parallel. The Lotus is a classical poem written to rightly justify the strength of a woman's tradition in literature. She analyzes the myth of the supremacy of the English flower in order to give value to the sanctity of a beautiful Indian flower like lotus. The goddess of love, Aphrodite, approached the flower goddess, Flora, to create a flower which would undisputedly be the queenliest of all flowers. Both the lily and the rose used their bards of power in their fight over the title. Now, bards is associated with the Gallic spiritual power tradition of England, Scotland, and Ireland. Toru uses Greek and Roman mythologies as support for her Hindu beliefs. The rose is described as never reaching the level of the lily flower because the lily has a strong-willed appearance. In line 8 of the poem, climax is reached where all the flower groups form a coterie in a bitter conflict. The goddess Flora is given a task of creating a flower as delicious as the rose and stately as the lily in her pride. Lines 9 to 14 of the poem describe the solution to the problem of finding the queenliest flower of all. The poet has Flora create a flower that is both red as a rose and white as a lily. As a result, Flora creates a flower with the characteristics of a rose and a lily combined and created the stunningly beautiful lotus. The lotus is a national symbol of India and the Hindu faith as well. The idea of Hindu being the ultimate religion of the world is the main focus of this poem. Indian tradition explains that the lotus flower springs not from the earth but from the surface of water and will remain pure and unblemished even if the water be impure. The lotus is also observed as the medium of the Hindu creator Narayana and his second being, God Brahma. This sonnet is written in Petrarchan style, further separating into octave and sestet. The problem of searching the queenliest flower is present in the octave or the 8 lines, and the issue resolved by creating the lotus in the sestet, 6 lines. The figures of speech used include personification, simile, metaphor, and use of both dialogues and descriptions. Thus, lotus represents a harmonious vision of life, and superiority lies in the simultaneous presence of opposing qualities, an idealistic message.